forsaken booth. The truth is you sadly mistaken. Proof I'm better than.
Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. Today we're going to be analyzing WWEEVIL Episode 8, which is featuring on Roman Reigns, the tribal chief, the head of the table. So this was essentially a documentary on Roman Reigns. So if you're interested in the life of Roman Reigns, they tell you essentially what WWE and the Usos have been saying for a long time, that the character of the head of the table, the tribal chief, is how Joe Anoa'i is pretty much outside of the ring. And they've basically taken his outside of the ring persona and put it into the ring, which is, you know, most of the time the best way to do things. Now, I have talked effusively about Roman Reigns on this channel. I really don't see how I can say anything different without just repeating myself. But to get where, you know, we need to go, which is finishing this series, Roman Reigns is uniquely situated in the king, what we call the king archetype. The king is the ruler by divine right or through some other force of authority. He is put in position. Roman Reigns comes from a lineage. You know, the Anoa'i family is considered a royal family in wrestling. There's Anoa'is literally all over the place. Now, the crown prince of the Anoa'i family is Roman Reigns. He is sort of the prototype. You know, he's big, he's strong, he's good looking. He's everything that all the other Anoa'is in some ways are not. And he was sort of the chosen one from the beginning. And as the chosen one, he becomes sort of the man of destiny, which means he has sort of the curse of the gifted, sort of like Randy Orton, where there's going to be people who, there's going to be a maturity thing there where he's going to have to grow into the role. But it's also going to be a growing pains in terms of how other people come to grips with the destiny of this guy being the guy. And that's really what we got with Roman here, is that you learn that the head of the table, the tribal chief sort of character, is created the night after he defeats The Undertaker at WrestleMania 33. He stands in the ring and is booed for like 10 minutes straight. And Ed Koskey, who works in WWE Creative, says essentially Vince wanted to play the long game with Roman Reigns. He wanted to sort of wait out all of the people who were going to boo him and just sort of ignore them for a while. You know, they'll go away. But he found on that night, after Roman Reigns defeated The Undertaker, that it wasn't going to work that way. That he wasn't going to be able to wait this out. This was worse than anything Cena had ever gotten. So, sort of, they kind of had to change things up. But they continued to stay the course for a little while. And then the leukemia thing happened, and Roman becomes a huge babyface. Everybody loves him. But not too long after the leukemia scare, he's getting booed again. So now they have to come up with some way of changing this guy. And the pandemic happened. So the pandemic gave them an opportunity to slow down. Roman wasn't going to be on TV. He's a leukemia survivor. He can't be on television. And it gave him an opportunity to try something different. And trying something different means to create this persona. Now, I've seen people talk about the tribal chief, the head of the table, and they've used mafia. You know, it's like he's using mob tactics. And it's like, yes, but you don't really understand. It's all the same thing. You know, the Machiavellian rise to power of most princes to kingdom is usually through mafia style tactics, manipulation, abuse, high self-esteem, narcissism, attention seeking. All these sorts of behaviors that come out is usually the way that somebody comes from being low level to being upper level. The difference between Roman Reigns, however, is he's sort of, like I said, he's the crown prince. So he doesn't really need to manipulate anybody. You know, most of the manipulation comes in trying to get people to respect and acknowledge that he is the rightful ruler. And from that perspective, that's where we get Roman Reigns. So when Roman Reigns debuts, what is some of the first things that he says? If you know your history, you've been watching the show, you know, he went off on the Fiend saying, you can't handle this responsibility. You know, you are a freak in a mask. You can't handle this. And he takes it upon himself to be the responsible one from this perspective, you see him as the tyrannical father. Now, the tyrannical father is one of the most oldest, tried and true mythological concept in history. Before the husband became Fred Flintstone or Homer Simpson, he was often seen as being Zeus, as being the All-Father. What Odin is in Norse mythology. He's the king. God King is probably the better way to put it. And God King, when you have this kind of sort of concept, is the God King is a mortal man who has such a high self-esteem, such grandiosity, and such egotism, such narcissism, that he actually mistakes himself for a god. So you get this from Xerxes in the movie 300, where Xerxes is the king of kings. He goes to other kingdoms and subjugates their king. So he sees himself as something beyond a king. He's a god, even though he's just a man, just like everyone else. This is what makes the scene in 300 where Leonidas throws his spear and rakes some of the rings out of Xerxes' face. That's what makes that scene so powerful, is that Leonidas made God bleed, or at least a guy who thinks himself as a god made him bleed, reminded him that he's mortal. So you have a situation where you have this character, and you can see it pretty much everywhere. Again, going through the mythology of kings in history. I mean, we really don't need to, do we? But you see the king archetype all over the place. The Godfather is one of my favorite ones because you see Michael Corleone, the Don, the Don of the family. People kiss his ring. They come to him. They speak respectfully. He speaks slowly. He's not angry. Even when he gets angry, he tempers his demeanor. He doesn't have outbursts too much. And Michael sees that. Michael is the shadow to him, to Don Corleone. And he learns that he picks up those ways. But Michael is more manipulative. But he is also an all-father. He is all-controlling. You see, as the series goes on, Michael Corleone is even disciplining his brother and sister. That's the level of control that he has over his family, is that his older brother and older sister are having to come to him for money. And he's saying, throwing in their faces that their children don't respect them or their partners don't respect them or whatever. And this is making the family look bad, and these people are kind of like, who do you think you are? Like, you're the little brother. But Roman Reigns is different in this situation. I think he's older than the Usos. So he's in a situation where he has to discipline his family. And he has to set himself as being different from them. In terms of, they're all in the same age bracket. But he has to say, I'm the crown prince. I'm the guy. I'm the one. So that leads us to his feud with Jey Uso, where Jey Uso has this belief that, hey, I could be the tribal chief too, and I could be the guy. Why can't it be me? And now Roman has to set the standard. He has to put Jey Uso in his place. Again, like the All-Fathers, you control the path that other people want to walk, or will walk rather than want to. You're putting them on a path and saying, this is your role. This is my role. This is your role. You cannot be the king. I have to be the king. It has to be me. It can't be you. And from that perspective, you start to see the breakdown of the characters. That Jey Uso is far more emotional and in some ways cares more about the family than Roman does. Roman has that great air of self-importance. And with that comes, I will do whatever it takes. And if that means damn near killing my own cousin, I will do it. Well, Jey doesn't have that. He doesn't have that in his heart. So that's one of the major differences. And Jey sees, okay, we're stronger together. And if that means I have to listen to Roman, then I'll listen to Roman. And Roman can never do that. He can never subjugate himself to Jey Uso. But it's all about knowing who you are and knowing what your role is. And the role of Roman Reigns is the ruler. And he realizes that, and he utilizes that to perfection, and is better at it than most people that I've seen. If you talk about wrestling characters that utilize the king archetype, not just Jerry the King Lawler, but like Triple H, Triple H is the next guy who I think does a very good job at, the king archetype. But Roman is so much better because it's not so on the nose. because he does hide it under that sort of stoic mafia style presentation, it works because it's not beating you over the head with I'm the king of kings. It is I'm the head of the table. And now Roman is getting to the point in 2022 where he said I'm operating on God mode, where he's not calling himself a god, but he's saying I'm operating in God mode. And the moment he starts to operate in God mode, Roman starts to, in a way, drift further and expand his rulership. Now, one of the king's jobs is not just to create the boundaries of the territory and maintain those boundaries, but he also has to grow the territory. So we get from WrestleMania 38, Roman extends the boundaries. He does what quote unquote nobody has ever done, even though it has been done before. He merges Raw and SmackDown together by becoming the WWE champion. So now he has both titles. He rules both Raw and SmackDown. And he says, okay, much like Alexander the Great, who conquered all of these lands from here to there, there's nothing else left for me to do. You know, I've done everything that there is to do. I'm the undisputed ruler of WWE. There is no other world champion. It's only me. And we start to till the fields, you know? So if you, from SmackDown, the most recent episode of SmackDown before this recording, he sets the Usos on a new path. You guys are now going to go and solidify the tag team division. Much like a king would send his best soldiers to a new town to subjugate the people there. All right. Raw is open territory for us now. Raw is open territory for the family now. So go get those tag team titles. Raw has their own tag team titles. You go get them. You go collect them for us, for the family. And we see that throughout the archetype of the king. That's usually the general idea, is the king conquers new lands for the benefit of the people who are already within his borders. So you will see the king will initiate wars or subjugate populations in the hopes that his people can go in and plunder that population and in turn increase his own reputation, increase his own wishes, increase his own standing and status in the world. So if we go back, we can see that how everything built from the beginning. Roman Reigns was pegged to be the guy in 2015, 2016 or something like that. He was, cursed with the blessing of the boss, the God King, the God of WWE being Vince McMahon. He's going to be the guy. And because everyone realizes that he's the crown prince, here comes the heat. And Roman doesn't really see it that way. And at first, he kind of sees himself as being sort of this average Joe who, yes, he wants to be the guy, he wants to be the champion, but he's still kind of a puppet of the god. He's still Vince's guy. He's cutting these incredibly bad promos, the Suffer and Succotash promo. He's kind of confused and he's a little bit lost, but he knows he has a general idea of where he's going. He's growing into the role. And as he's trying to grow into the role, people are hating him. They despise him because they know he's up next. They know he's going to be the guy. So every time he beats one of their favorites, it's, he's the worst. And this brings out a sort of, similar to The Miz, where it's kind of like the hate that you made. Like Roman Reigns gives back the negativity that he got, in his coming up, in his, pupil stage when he was mistreated by the audience. He kind of gives that back by subjugating the audience. Acknowledge me. Like you guys hated me before. Now you will acknowledge me. And we see that Roman started to grow into that role when he went up to The Undertaker, a guy who was 30 years in the business, and said, "This is my yard." That's when he started to believe it. He started to believe that he was the guy. For a long time, it wasn't Roman is this egotistical babyface. He had a sort of DTA, Stone Cold Steve Austin, don't trust anybody mentality when he had the one versus all sort of t-shirt, and that was the branding going for, was Roman was going to fight everybody in the Royal Rumble by himself. And that have that concept when he was going to battle against the McMahons and, you know, finally win back his power from Vince. And that was generally the idea, and it worked. You know, his match with Triple H was, I think, successful, and it successfully got him over. From that point, he was able to move the McMahons to the side as a barrier to his success in kayfabe. So there was one thing left, and that was the audience, right? Once you remove the McMahons from the situation, the audience are all that's left. And the embodiment of the audience, the embodiment of the present day at that time of what being a superstar was The Undertaker. So when he steps in and says, "This is my yard," to The Undertaker, everybody's like, this guy's lost his mind. Like he's crazy, right? Guy's crazy. So when it happens, when he defeats The Undertaker, everybody now knows it was no lie. It was not a lie. It was not an exaggeration. It was not some random heel popping up saying, "It's my yard now. I'm the star. I'm the guy." Like what Bray Wyatt said, "I'm the new face of fear." You know, him losing to The Undertaker proved that he wasn't. Roman Reigns beating The Undertaker at WrestleMania, saying, "It's my yard," taking control of the company, fulfilling the destiny that was given to him by Vince McMahon. Of course, that brought the most hate possible. And I'm surprised it took 2 or 3 years before they actually started morphing that into a heel character. But that's what the head of the table, that's when it was born. You know, when everybody realized that Roman Reigns was going to be the guy and there was no way to stop it. It was just not going to stop. So now we're in this situation where when Roman tells Bray Wyatt, "You can't handle the responsibility. You can't do this. I have to do it." It's because he's already shouldered some of the responsibility. Not just because he's been the champion before, but also he's already dealt with the criticism. He's already done all of the things that, you know, Bray Wyatt has failed to do, that Braun Strowman had failed to do, that everybody else who was coming up had already failed to do. He had already done it. So he's in a situation now where he's uniquely qualified to be the star of the billion-dollar brand. And he takes that responsibility seriously. And he comes back, "Acknowledge me." You know? Now, the people who hate me, who frowned upon me, who booed me, now you have to respect me. Because I'm in a whole new plateau. And as he goes through Brock and Cena and merging the titles and has all of these great big angles, we all are forced to acknowledge that the tribal chief, the head of the table, is the one undisputed king of WWE, as all the others have fallen off. You know, Triple H has been forced to retire, and Undertaker has retired, and he's the last, and Brock was, you know, basically considered himself retired after WrestleMania 36 and really just gave one more run. And, you know, Seth Rollins is put on a different situation every now and again. He is the one that's still standing. You know, Randy Orton is doing tag team stuff. Cena is off doing movies. He's the only one left. And that's a very interesting situation for, you know, Roman Reigns as a character. And it makes sense that he's finally fulfilling the destiny that people believed that he was going to have in 2014, 2015. That is finally starting to come to pass. And people are acknowledging it. So thank you guys for listening. The documentary is actually pretty good. You should go watch it. Like, share, and subscribe. And I'll talk to you guys later.